There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right, let the King of Glory in. Open up the door starts right now. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he heard a sound behind him. He said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven, and I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and world view. Good day, everybody. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for joining in and tuning in and having fun here from the east end of Long Island here at Faith FM. I am streaming over on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page. If you'd like to join in over there and watch the broadcast over at facebook.com/faithfm91.7. Join in the conversation over there. Let me know where you are watching from. You can also follow me on the Truth Social Network platform at AJ White. If you're not on that platform, I would encourage you to get on that platform almost really as quickly as you can. Facebook is starting to really crack down on their censorship once again as we go into an election year. Imagine that. But anyway, I don't want to digress already. But look me up over on Truth Social at AJ White. I also have an Open Up the Doors group page over there as well. If you are outside of the Faith FM broadcast area, the best way to listen to Faith FM is to download the free Faith FM app. We have the app both for the Android platforms, the Apple platforms. Look it up in your respective app store, so to speak, and look up Faith FM in Sag Harbor, and you'll be able to. The app works great; it really does. You'll be able to listen to great Christian programming 24/7 here from the east end of Long Island, brought to you by Faith FM in Sag Harbor. All right, I do plan on going to the phones today later on in the second hour. If you'd like to jot down the phone number right now so you have it ready to go when we get into that second hour, 631-725-2069. 631-725-2069 if you would like to be part of today's broadcast. And as always, we've got a lot to talk about, so I am going to hop on it. Jesus, take the wheel. You know, folks, needless to be said, the world is spiraling, if you haven't noticed, the world is spiraling into chaos as a perfect storm and convergence of Iranian apocalyptic aspirations, which I'll get into a little bit later. But the world is spiraling into this chaotic chaos, this perfect storm between what the Iranians are trying to do based on their eschatological views, but along with the incompetency and the duplicity and even, I'll say, the treachery of the Biden administration. There's a perfect storm brewing, bringing the entire world closer to the cusp of a global war, a war that will play right into the hands of the Iranian Ayatollah's apocalyptic yearnings, not to even mention the Chinese and the Russians. But I'm going to focus today on the Iranian factor. You see, when war broke out in Israel going on almost 2 weeks ago, as I reported last week, the Biden administration was denying that Iran had anything directly to do with the attack by Hamas. And Biden continued on with that obfuscation and denialism this past week in an interview on 60 Minutes with Scott Pelley on CBS. Despite the ever-growing and insurmountable evidence and the flat-out admission by Hamas leaders that this administration continues to run interference and even worse, they continue to run interference and even appeasement for Iran. And even though this administration, Biden, they readily admit that Iran supports Hamas to the tune of over $100 million a year. Yet they choose to look the other way. And there's going to be some real ramifications and consequences to all of this in the days ahead. The Biden administration keeps insisting that it does not have any evidence, to use their words, quote unquote, they don't have any direct evidence of Iran's involvement in the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. But apparently, they either missed or totally dismissed, and I'm sure that's what it is, totally dismissed the Wall Street Journal report on October 9th, just 2 days later. The heading in the Wall Street Journal on October 9th was, quote unquote, Iran helped plot attack on Israel over several weeks, with the subheading of the Wall Street Journal saying the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps gave the final go-ahead last Monday in Beirut. Maybe the administration maybe they missed that. I don't know. But then there was this other report. Iran in the Washington Post. Here it is. Same week in the Washington Post. The headline read, Hamas received weapons and training from Iran. Officials say, underline officials say, but in this Washington Post, the Washington Compost article, report, these people are like cognitive dissonance, I don't know. First, the headline is Hamas received weapons and training from Iran, officials say. But then in the very next breath, in their subliner, they make a completely nonsensical and contradictory statement. Iran broadly complicit in supporting Palestinian militants, but no evidence seen of a direct role in slaughter, officials say. Well, if the headline said the officials said that they got their weapons and training from Iran, how can those same officials say, but there's no evidence? I mean, what does that word salad even mean? But that's the Washington Compost trying once again to run interference for the Biden administration. But we'll just go along. Then, as was reported in Newsweek on October 11th, remember, the administration's still denying. But in the Newsweek, it's not exactly like Newsweek is like some unknown periodical, some unknown news blog. But in Newsweek, it was reported from the Hamas representative Ahmad Abu Dahadi, we coordinated with Hezbollah and with Iran and the axis of resistance before, during, and after the battle at the highest level. Now, I got to ask the question, does Biden or anyone else in his administration ever read the news reports? Well, of course they do. But they're just going to keep straight up lying to our faces anyway. Oh, there's so much to unwrap today, folks. But the precise details of Iran's direct role in authorizing the Hamas attack on Israel are increasingly coming to light. And those involved in the investigation insisting that both Iran and Lebanese Hezbollah, which Iran controls, were involved in the planning of the Hamas terrorist operation, despite what the administration or Biden is saying publicly on the TV. They have to know this. I mean, they just have to. It's simply undeniable. And yet this administration, at least publicly, keeps denying it. But let's move on from here, because I think we all get that. But I just got to put it out there in the forefront, because the underlying current of much of what I want to share today is that this administration and our government is flat out lying to us. And we are heading down a very, 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 very dangerous road because of their duplicity and their treachery. Because even more disturbing and even more seriously alarming developments have come to light, at least come to light for those people who are paying attention. This week, just yesterday, Biden went to Israel to meet with Netanyahu. It was touted by the administration that the Israelis invited Biden to come and meet with them. That's a lie, which I'll get to in a moment. But the administration would like you to think that the reason they went to Israel was to show their support and their solidarity with Israel. After all, Biden is saying all the right things publicly. But my friends, let me tell you something. What he's saying publicly and what he's actually doing behind closed doors are completely two separate things. You know, last week, on last week's broadcast, Pastor Doug and I, in our conversation in the second hour, we wondered aloud. We acknowledged that Biden was saying all the right things, but we wondered aloud in our conversation just how long this administration would stand with Israel and have, quote unquote, Israel's back before they stabbed Israel in the back. Unfortunately, it appears that it's a lot sooner and quicker than we even expected. Yesterday, Israeli journalist and political pundit Caroline Glick reported on her podcast some extremely troubling things. I watched her podcast yesterday twice. It's about half hour long. I can't get into everything she said. But for those of you who don't know who Caroline Glick is, she's a well-known Israeli journalist. She's very, very credible. A woman of integrity. I don't believe she's a believer in Jesus. We can pray for her. But she's very credible, as I said, Israeli journalist. And I don't have the time, as I said, to go into everything she said and laid out. But I want to give you some of the highlights. Caroline began her podcast the other day. And I don't know if it came out Tuesday. I didn't see it until Wednesday. So I don't know if it came out Tuesday or Wednesday. But she began her podcast with these words, and I transcribed them right off the podcast. It's really a precarious moment, she said. It's really a precarious moment Israel is facing, and it's coming from the Biden administration. We right now are in the danger of losing our sovereign control over our military. Secretary of State Tony Blinken arrived here yesterday, and I'm going to think that was either Monday or Tuesday. But she said Secretary of State Blinken arrived here yesterday, and he had a 7-hour meeting in our war cabinet with the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, Benny Gantz. What came out of that meeting, she said, was Tony Blinken, which is our Secretary of State, wasn't trying to help Israel at all. What he was doing was demanding that Israel enable resupply to Gaza using the euphemism of humanitarian aid, Blinken was threatening to withhold American war material from Israel that we need. Now, let me break away from what she was saying. I want to mention something here. Blinken was threatening to withhold American war material from Israel that we need. See, but these things are things that the U.S. has already vowed to Israel in our alliance. And I'm going to say it once, I'm going to probably say it more than once today. God does not take lightly vow breakers and covenant breakers. Caroline went on in her podcast, quote, Blinken was threatening to withhold the things we need. Specifically, she said, things like bunker buster bombs. They need those things. Almost the entire infrastructure of Hamas is underground, under hospitals, under schools, under office buildings. They have almost the entire subterranean level of Gaza is full of tunnels and the infrastructure of Hamas's terrorist organization. They need the bunker busters. But we were holding them back. We are holding them back. Or maybe we're not anymore because we twisted Israel's arms to do other things. But let me get back to what she was saying from her podcast. He was threatening to hold back things like bunker buster bombs and also the bombs and normal ordnance for our jets, which are all American made, and other things, including artillery shells. And she said, unless Israel provides, here's that word again, quote unquote, humanitarian aid, then the Biden government would not give Israel the things that they need. Again, I'm going to say it. Folks, that is a breaking and a betrayal of our alliance and commitment to Israel. And I'll say it again. Let me state, the Word of God has a lot to say about breaking vows made. If we turn our backs on Israel, if we hinder what they're doing, I have great concern for our nation. I have great concern for our nation anyway. But this will just be one more thing in the bucket. The duplicity of this administration, and I'll add treachery, is off the charts. As I said a moment ago, it was reported, has been reported in the media, that Israel openly invited Biden to come. But Caroline reports it was actually the Biden administration that demanded Netanyahu invite him to come to Israel. They got to play the game. Oh, invite us. We want you to invite the president, and he'll come, because it's all a PR stunt. It's all a PR things for public consumption. It's a charade. And it's a dangerous charade. The bottom line takeaway from Caroline's report on Wednesday, and I encourage you to go and listen to it. I have it posted on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page, as well as my regular personal page, as well as my group page in Truth Social. Go and listen to it. Because the bottom line takeaway, and the many, many things she said, is that the Biden administration has been actively impeding and hindering Israel from going into Gaza to do what they need to do. We've been wondering what's been taking them so long. First, we thought it was the weather. Then we said, well, it's military planning. But we've been holding them back from doing what they need to do. This is both reckless and dangerous, my friends. This administration is telling Israel which targets they can target and which ones they can't. They won't let them attack missile launching sites because the missile launching sites are in schools and hospitals. Well, I'm sorry, folks, but the Israelis give civilians who are innocent plenty of time to get out of there. They're the only army in the world that does that I'm aware of. They warn them ahead of time. If you're innocent, if you're a civilian, get out of there. We're bombing this place in 24 hours. We're bombing this place in whatever. Get out. Get out, get out, get out. So if Hamas is firing missiles from there, whether it's a school, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a UN facility, which they do, this is a fact. If Hamas is firing missiles from there, then Israelis need to take those missile sites out. They become legitimate military targets once they are used in an offensive and militaristic way, which they are being used at. So for our government, for Anthony Blinken, for the Biden administration to forbid Israel from targeting those missile sites and missile launchers, or we won't give you the armaments that you need, it's a breach of contract. It's a breach of the allegiance. It's a breach of what we've vowed to our best alliance in the Middle East. And it's all wrapped up in the neat little gift wrapping called "We've got to give them humanitarian aid." We want you to give them humanitarian aid. So, to add to the chaos and to continue down this road of catastrophe, Biden announced yesterday, Wednesday, that he's going to give $100 million to the Gaza Strip. That would be Hamas, folks. Your tax dollars and my tax dollars, $100 million worth, which is the same amount of money Iran gives to Hamas every single year. Imagine that. I guess Joe Biden doesn't want to be outdone by the Ayatollahs of Iran. I'll see you $100 million. I'll take your $100 million. I'll see you another $100 million. This guy is a catastrophe waiting to happen. Biden says that they're going to put things in place to make sure this humanitarian aid doesn't get into the hands of Hamas. Exactly how Biden plans to do that remains to be seen, inasmuch as Hamas controls everything in Gaza. They are the governing authority. They inspect every truck. They inspect every shipment, everything. They're in charge of the banking system. Biden acts as if Hamas doesn't control every square inch of Gaza. Every single person living in Gaza is controlled by Hamas. Hamas was blocking the roads last week when the people were fleeing from the northern area of Gaza. When Israel said, "Get out, get out, get out," it was Hamas that was blocking the roads from not allowing those people to evacuate. Why? Because they want to use them as human shields. Why? Because they want the media to swarm in like vultures and take pictures of dead quote unquote innocent civilians. This is what Hamas does, and this is why Israel needs to be allowed to do what they must do to defend themselves. Again, it's duplicity from our government on steroids, that they want to act like they're so concerned about monitoring the humanitarian aid, when in effect, they are supporting Hamas along with the genocidal regime in Iran. And like I said, I can't go into everything that Caroline Glick reported in her podcast. I would encourage you to go listen to it. Not right now. Listen to me right now. But it's alarming what is actually going on behind the scenes and what our tax dollars are paying for. And ultimately, scripturally speaking, our nation will give an account to God for. Stick around. I'll be right back. Here's Paul Wilbur. We have overcome. Keep it right here on Faith FM. I'll be back. Can you hear it? The Lion of Judah roars, the shout of El Shaddai, the distant thunder. Can you hear it? I can. It's getting closer and closer. It's getting closer and closer. Welcome back. Andy White here. You are listening to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7, 93.3 in Napeag, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad, a lighthouse beaming the light of truth and reality to those groping around in the dark miasma of an alternative universe. All right, I'm going to change gears a little bit. I went through some of the political commentary. Now I want to do some of the prophetic analysis as I see it. But let me begin here. About 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, I did a broadcast which is titled Iran, the Mahdi, and the Coming Chaos 4 years ago. I went into a lot of detail, or reasonably a lot of detail, in that broadcast regarding the Mahdi and what Muslims, and particularly the Shia, which is what the Iranians are, believe. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is a 12er, and so are most of the other top officials in the Iranian government. A 12er, for those of you who might not know, is one who believes that a 12th imam is coming who is their Messiah, the Mahdi. These Shia believe in only 12 men who can be called imam, the last of which, according to them, has been hiding unseen on earth since the 9th century. And according to Shia Islam, the last imam will one day return as the Mahdi. Mahdi is a title meaning the guided one, and he is anticipated as the perfect Muslim who will reappear and unite the world under Islam. You need to understand, this is what they believe, and they believe that more than a lot of Christians believe in their own eschatology. Iran's leaders are a bunch of apocalyptic ideologues that believe a massive war will usher in the return of the Mahdi. And many of them are convinced that the time for this to happen is very near, and it's their job and their duty as good Muslims to help create it, to help bring this chaos, to usher in their Messiah. Most of us in the Western world cannot even begin to comprehend how they see the world. And I'm not going to go into all of that again that I did on the broadcast 4 years ago. But I do want you to go back and listen to that broadcast. I did it in January 2020. You'll find it on my YouTube channel. You'll find it on my Rumble channel. You could just do a search, go in the search engine and look up, look up Iran, Iran, the Mahdi, and the coming chaos. 4 years ago. I went back. I listened to it this week. Actually, I listened to it a couple of times. It was almost, I don't like using the word. It was almost prophetic. But it's not. I'm not a prophet. But I watch these things that are going on. And I read the word. And I understand these things. And I ask for insight. I ask for prudence. Like any one of us can. And it's not, you don't have to be a prophet when you see black clouds gathering and you're hearing the distant thunder and you're beginning to feel the raindrops. You're going to say, oh, a storm is coming. But I want to 4 years later, do a little bit of an update, a piggyback off of that. Because here's the thing, my friends. These people, these ayatollahs in Iran, and Muslims in general, whether they're Shia or whether they're Sunni, they all believe, there are differences, obviously, between Sunni and Shia. Some of those differences are just within the weeds of their own Islamic foundations, but they all believe in the Mahdi. They all believe that Islam is going to take over the world. They are all apocalyptic in that sense. But these people play the long game. 4 years ago, they said they were going to get revenge and carry out General Soleimani's plan step by step. Remember General Soleimani? He was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that Donald Trump took out. But with the removal of General Soleimani by Trump back in 2019, the new commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces, his name is Brigadier General Ismail Ghani, said that Iran is planning to strike back at the U.S. and eliminate its presence from the Middle East. Quote, we promise to continue Martyr Soleimani's path with the same strength, and his martyrdom will be reciprocated in several steps by removing the U.S. from the region. Underline those words. His martyrdom will be reciprocated in several steps. They play the long game. They don't forget. Sometimes we think, especially in our society, what's in the headlines, we forget one story to another in less than a week. They remember. They remember because they have a game plan, because they want to usher in their Mahdi. In fact, Ghani said then 4 years ago, another quote, the new leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, quote, the continuance of this movement, the Shia Islamic movement, the desire for a caliphate run by the Mahdi. That's what he's talking about, this movement. The continuance of this movement is to reach the global governance of Imam Mahdi. May God hasten his reappearance. This important goal will be attained under the supreme leader. And he's speaking of Ali Khamenei. One of the things I brought out in that broadcast I did 4 years ago was to show the comparisons or the corrupted mirror image between what we teach from biblical eschatology and what Islamic eschatology teaches. Because when you compare the notes, it turns out that the Mahdi fits the description of our Antichrist to the T. He enters into a 7-year covenant. He does all these things. The Mahdi, and go back and listen to that broadcast. Like I said, I don't want to get all back into that. But their Islamic eschatology is like a carnival house, house of mirrors, where Christian eschatology gets twisted and contorted and distorted. But this is their goal. This is the goal that is stated by all the Islamic leaders, especially the Ayatollahs. The Shia mullahs of Iran, along with the rest of the Muslim world, believe that the Mahdi arrives on the scene during a time of great turmoil and chaos caused by war. And here's the clincher. They seek to create the chaos. Unlike Christian eschatology, where we're waiting for the return of the Lord, and we understand it will be a time of great tribulation, we're not trying to make it happen. They are. Now, with all that in mind, while the Biden administration and many in the West choose to ignore and disregard Iran's apocalyptic aspirations and the role and reasons they have in arming and training and funding Hamas and Hezbollah and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, there have been a large number of Arabs who have been warning of Tehran's expansionist actions in the Middle East for a long time. Remember, generally speaking, the Persians and the Arabs have been natural enemies for centuries. They make covenants, they make treaties ever so often for their own nationalistic purposes, but essentially they are at odds with one another. So therefore, countries like Saudi Arabia have been warning for decades how Iran uses its proxies to wreak havoc, not only in Israel, but in Arab countries as well. In fact, one of the theories behind the timing of this whole thing that, remember, was launched and instigated by Iran and funded by Iran, one of the reasons out there is because Israel and Saudi Arabia were close to signing on to the Abraham Accords. And the Persians, the Iranians, don't want that to happen. So now that treaty, that alliance that was coming in with Israel and Saudi Arabia is now at the very least put on hold momentarily for now. So that was one of the goals that the Ayatollahs were looking to achieve by releasing Hamas and causing this chaos to bubble up even now. And again, Saudi Arabia and others Egypt, others have been warning. They've been warning that through its proxies, the Iranian regime has been doing these things. And now, again, like I said, they play the long game. Iran now effectively occupies Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, in addition to the Gaza Strip. Their goal of the Shia Crescent is all but realized. Something else I've talked about in the past. A Shia Crescent that they want to become the next caliphate for the Mahdi. But they see their crowning achievement and their crowning moment. They see it as the annihilation of Israel to be finally within their grasp. And many Arab nations, those who were signing on to the Abraham Accords, they can see clearly what many Westerners apparently want to willfully remain oblivious to, my friends. In another quite lengthy article, I'm only going to be able to touch upon slightly. I'm going to put this article in the comment stream when we upload the broadcast after we do the post-production. I'm going to put Caroline Glick's podcast in the comment stream, and I'm going to put this other article that was put out by the Jewish News Syndicate the other day by somebody named Mordecai Kader. But he put out an article called "What an Expanded War in the Middle East Could Look Like," and it's a scary article. If I didn't have the Bible to assure me of how things are going to work out, this is a scary article because the scenario he lays out is very, very plausible. But he writes in this article, just briefly, he writes, a source I've known for years, an expatriate from the Middle East, a supporter of Israel who lives in Europe and is in continuous contact with people in Iran and Iraq, conveyed to me their assessment that Iran plans to launch a combined attack on Israel in the foreseeable future that will include all the forces at its disposal in several Arab countries. In Lebanon, they control Hezbollah and Hamas, and Lebanon has over 150,000 precision-guided missiles that could reach Tel Aviv, that could reach all of Israel. In Syria, there are 17 armed and ready combat units, militias, and he names them Fatimam and Zamu, a bunch of Arabic names I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce here. But there are 17 armed and ready combat units at the beck and call of Iran, sitting in Syria, waiting to invade. Iran has transferred a very large number of missiles and UAVs to Syria, and these are ready to be launched. In Iraq, the same thing. Dozens of militias armed with missiles and UAVs armed from Iran. In Yemen, the Houthis. Now, you say Yemen, that's pretty far away from Israel. But the Houthis have been equipped by Iran with long-range missiles capable of reaching Israel. And, of course, in Gaza, we have Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad with missiles obviously capable of disabling the Israel Defense Forces and the Israeli Air Force bases. This is all coming up to a boiling point. And this author in this article, he proceeds to lay out what I'll call a nightmare scenario that is truly frightening. And it's also very prophetic, though I don't think he was trying to be prophetic. Again, it's a lengthy article. I don't have the time to read the entire thing. And let me see what time it is here. Let me go through just a couple of points that he lays out. He writes that under the pretext of the duty of the Muslim world to save the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the Israeli occupation and oppression, Iran will conduct a staged, comprehensive, integrated, and coordinated attack on Israel. The first phase will be a shower of missiles and UAVs from all the aforementioned arenas, the ones I just listed, from every side. They're going to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome. They're going to overwhelm Israel's ability to defend itself from these thousands and thousands of missiles. And he writes, within 2 or 3 hours, the Israeli skies will be open and the Air Force degraded or grounded. That's the first phase. Then the aerial phase will come in. Then a cyber attack will come in to bring down the Israeli infrastructure. People will be running, obviously, into bomb shelters. They'll be running in panic. There'll be mass chaos on the streets. And he writes that the calculation of the Iranians is that the mobilization of Israel's reserves will take several days and will at best be partial due to the chaos that will ensue from the initial attack. The invasion of ground forces from Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza will focus on Israeli settlements with the aim of demoralizing the Israeli public and forcing the government to surrender. Here's key: forcing the government to surrender in order to save the lives of many Israeli civilians. When I read that, my heart leaped. Because number one, this is all a very possible scenario, one I've talked about for many, many years. Some believe this is the Psalm 83 war. I talked about that a little bit last week. It may be. I'm not convinced of that, but either way, it overlaps. But here's the point I want to make, because I've been saying this for many, many years. Everyone talks about the peace treaty that comes out of Daniel 9:27. But I've always said this. I don't believe it's going to be necessarily a mutually agreed upon peace treaty. The word that's used in Daniel, in the Hebrew, the Aramaic, is gavah. He shall confirm, it's sometimes translated, he shall confirm, or he shall strengthen a covenant with the many. But the word gavah in the Hebrew is a word that means to force or enforce something upon a people. See, I don't I don't necessarily believe that the so-called peace treaty that the Antichrist will bring into bear that begins Daniel's 70th week is something that is mutually countenanced. I think it's it's forced upon the Israelis. I believe it's more of a terms of surrender sort of agreement that we did with Japan after World War II. Time will tell. In the meantime, what will it take for the U.S. and the West to grasp that the appeasement of the Iranian regime is read by the mullahs and their proxies as weaknesses, as weakness. They see it as weakness. And this is why they believe their time to strike is now, because all they're seeing is weakness. If such appeasement continues, my friends, make no mistake about it. Today the carnage will be in Israel. Tomorrow it will be in the U.S. and in Europe. Stick around. I'll be right back. Jordan Feliz, we know Jesus is coming back. Keep it right here on Faith FM. I'll be right back. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Danny White here on Faith FM, WGB 90.7 and W93.3 in that WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. As I stumble over my words here. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Quick couple of program notes before I close with some final thoughts for this first hour. This first hour, by the way, does re-air 3 p.m. today. If you'd like to tune back in or just keep it right here on Faith FM. It also re-airs on Saturday at 1 p.m. Also, by way of reminder, please, if you've never subscribed to or liked my Open Up the Doors YouTube page, you can just look me up, Andy White, Open Up the Doors on YouTube as well as Rumble. I prefer Rumble. They don't take my videos down. They don't flag me. So if you'd like to subscribe to either one or both, or pick one, Rumble, then please look me up there, Andy White, Open Up the Doors, and you will be notified when we upload these broadcasts and archive them over there. Again, I do have a group page over on Truth Social. As I mentioned up at the beginning of the broadcast today, you could just look up Open Up the Doors, Andy White, if you're on Truth Socials as well. The group page is slowly but surely growing. The networking there, the community there is coming together pretty well. The phone number, I'm going to be going to the phones in several minutes into the 11 o'clock hour. The phone number is 631-725-2069. If you'd like to call in, be part of the broadcast, 631-725-2069. I would love to hear your thoughts and your comments and your questions, perhaps, on what is going on there over in Israel and the Middle East. And there's so much that we can talk about. But let me wrap up this first hour now. I only got a few minutes left for this first hour. Needless to say, folks, we need to continue to intercede and to pray for Israel more than ever before, because the days ahead are going to increasingly get darker. I know that's not a popular message, but it is what it is. The Bible tells us it is, and not that I'm leaning on Islamic eschatology, because I'm not, but you got to understand what they believe, and they are trying to create the chaos that we're seeing. And having said that, besides praying, besides interceding, we need to be the wise that Daniel 11 talks about. The wise who have an understanding of the times. We need to be in the scriptures, discerning and praying about wisdom and prudence and understanding. Someone asked me the other day, who are the wise in Daniel 11? Daniel 11, 32, 33. But the people who know their God shall be strong. The people who know their God That would be us, Bible-believing Christians, Messianic believers. In the context of Daniel, it really is the Jewish Messianic believers in the context of Daniel, they who know their God, they who are walking in the covenants of God, messianically. They're the wise. They're going to bring understanding in the midst of tribulation, in the midst of the dark times. Why is God allowing these things to happen? I've talked about that time and time again. But someone asked me this the other day. Who are the masculine? Who are the wise that Daniel's talking about? It's the church of the living God. That we've been grafted into the natural olive tree. We've been grafted into the olive tree along with the Jewish believers, the church, all of Israel, the Israel of God, both Old Testament, New Testament. I don't have time to get into all of that. But we need to be in the scriptures as a people who know their God so that we can carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. That's our last day's purpose, to be preaching the gospel and to instructing the many about why these things are going on that are going on. As I've said many times on this broadcast over the course of the last years, or it's been discussed with some of my guests that I've had on, the only friends that Israel will have in the last days, the only friends that Israel will have left in the final days will be the believing church. We need to step up to the plate. We really do. I've got some other things that I want to say, and I'll probably pick up on that in the second hour. But I do want to invite you to call in, 631-725-2069. You know, there's many things flying around Facebook and social media that are flat out wrong. And just because the majority of people believe it, or that's the popular or conventional wisdom and belief, those opinions do not make them right. We need to be in the Word, rightfully dividing, rightfully discerning the Word. The people who know their God shall be strong, carry out great exploits. And those are the people who understand shall instruct many. And those who are wise, the masculine, shall shine like the brightness of the firmament. And those who turn many to righteousness, like the stars, forever and forever. That's our last day's calling, to turn many to righteousness. I do have a caller calling in right away, and I'm going to go to the phones right away. I like that, going to the phones right away, right off the top of the show. That's what I like. Hello, David, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
Good. You made it through the break. You didn't hang up, and the call didn't drop. That's always a good sign.
It took me about 5 times to get the right phone number dialed. I had it written down right, but I kept misdialing it.
Oh, that's kind of a sign of age, but I won't go there. It's good to hear from you. Good to hear from you, David.
You too, brother.
Good to hear from you. So, please take it away, David. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you've been writing some articles. I've been reading them. I've been posting them. I've posted a couple of your blogs over on Truth Social. Are you over there? Are you on Truth?
No, I'm not over there. I'm not that savvy yet, but maybe sometime.
Well, I want you to know I have been the last couple that you wrote on, the situation in Israel. I've been posting them over there on Truth, and they've been getting shared around over there. So hopefully you're seeing a little uptick in your viewership.
Yeah, a little bit of my readership. If people want to sign up for the blog, it's Acts 26, like the Bible chapter, Acts26witness.org. Acts26witness.org is where you can read my stuff. But I guess I'll start with this. A couple things I wanted to say. One, and maybe you covered this. I didn't catch the first few minutes of your first hour. Maybe you covered this, but just the one of the things that I wanted to point out was when the atrocities began to surface of the attack a week ago Saturday night. It was so bad that it was truly unbelievable, to the point of, like, I'm not even going to comment on this because I'm not sure that it's real. It can't be this bad.
Right.
But then within probably 24 hours, those things were confirmed. The terrible atrocities, and the one that that spoke volumes to me was the beheadings of little children, the beheadings of even infants.
Mm-hmm,
There was a
mm-hmm.
report of like 40 plus infants beheaded, and which tells you this was not just a military operation. It was not just a commando raid. It was not a guerrilla insurgency. This was the hallmark of an Islamist jihadist attack, motivated by exactly what you've said, and that is the desire to create the conditions that would bring forth the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah, whom, from our perspective, is going to fulfill that Antichrist role. And that the other thing that you can see from that is that there is no, if that's the motivation, if it is a religious motivation, a feeling that I am doing God a favor by killing these people, I am making the world a better place by exterminating this race, I am actually going to win myself favor in heaven and with God by murdering and killing and slaughtering innocent people. If that's what is in the motivation of the hearts of people, there is no negotiation.
That's
there
right.
is no change of circumstance. The United Nations, I don't care what agency or what group of people say, well, if we just created the right conditions, gave them the right amount of land or sovereignty or whatever it is, then there would be peace. No. It is demonic. It is Satan. It is the same motivation that we read in Revelation 12, where Satan wants to destroy Israel, and he always has, and he's for centuries. The only thing that can change that situation, well, three things, but if there's enough force applied, you can put a lid on it for a while, but that's only a temporary solution. The only thing that could change things in before Jesus comes back is if there was to be a sweeping evangelistic revival where people came to Christ, because that would change their hearts. But short of that, the only thing that's going to change things is the fulfillment of everything that is written in Scripture and the ultimate return of Christ. So I wanted to share that little piece. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just my absolute astonishment and bewilderment at people here in America, here in the West, and Europe, who try to justify these things by saying, well, I had a Facebook friend, a person I went to high school with, comment on one of my posts and said, these people are so oppressed and they've been so downtrodden and oppressed by Israel that naturally they're going to lash out, and wouldn't we do the same thing if we were oppressed by another nation? And that's not even close.
I know. It
shows, not even close.
It shows the ignorance that they have. It's their own people that are suppressing them. It's the Hamas in Gaza that's oppressing them. It's the fact
You're exactly right.
It's the fact that the other Arab nations like Jordan don't want them. Egypt isn't taking in the refugees. Not one Arab nation, not one, has taken in one single solitary Gazan.
We should have compassion for not the Hamas terrorists in Gaza, but we should have compassion for the Arabs.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Who are in Gaza, who are under this oppression. They are being used. They are being used by everybody. They're being used by Hamas. Right. They're being used by the Ayatollahs in Iran. The Ayatollahs in Iran would easily, and they're doing it right now, they want these people to be sacrificed.
Oh, yeah.
I
talked about that last week.
The greatest thing that could ever happen is if all the people in Gaza were somehow, slaughtered, that they could blame on Israel and whip up. That would justify all their next moves. They could say, well, see, we're only responding to this tragedy that Israel has caused. So they're just being used. They're in a terrible, terrible situation. And Israel has done everything in their power to try to not have collateral damage. That's why in the hospital, when the thing came out day before yesterday or yesterday about the missiles hitting the hospital, I had somebody comment on one of my posts and said, "Well, I think it probably is Israel because
I knew immediately it wasn't.
I know it wasn't.
I knew immediately it wasn't.
Yeah, but this was early on, like in the first few minutes that it came out, and I said, "Well, I haven't even looked at it yet, but I can tell you this: if it was collateral damage, it was accidental.
At best,
you cannot say that. You cannot say
worst,
that about." Yep. What Hamas has done. They intentionally targeted innocent people and always have, and non-combatants. And one of the there's a good podcast, and it's certainly not a conservative organization put it out. It was New York Times. That's about as liberal as you can get. But they did a podcast of a survivor that came out. I think it was the one of the kibbutz Berea. Was where these people were in this kibbutz, and the terrorists came in, and there was an interview with one of the fathers of a family there that survived, and he talked about, he said, there was an 82-year-old grandmother who was kidnapped, and he said, do you know what she did every day? Every single day she drove to the border of Gaza, picked up children, took them to hospitals in Israel for kidney dialysis, and took them home. That's what she did every day, and they kidnapped her and took her back to Gaza. He said, we want to live in peace with these people. But anyway, they targeted. There's no accidental about beheading children. You're not accidentally being swept into a conflict. That is an intentional act. And it's demonic.
I think it's becoming more and more evident who the children of the light are and who the children of the darkness are, who the children of the devil are. It's becoming more and more evident. And when and I agree with you, you have to say to yourself, how can these people think that way? And I've talked about it many times in the past. It's a supernatural. It's a supernatural.
It's the spirit realm.
Yeah. Denial. It's a supernatural deception. That the God of this world has blinded the eyes of the unbelievers, lest they should see the light. And God hands them over. Not only is the God of this world blinding them, but you know what the scripture says in Thessalonians, because they receive not the love of the truth, they will be handed over to believe the lie. And that's a frightening, frightening thing, because then you know what? There is no more discussion with that type of a person. A person has been handed over to a reprobate mind. A person has been handed over to believe the lie by the Lord. At that point, you just have to kick the dust off your feet and move on, and don't waste your time. Don't waste your time with them. And to some degree, that takes discernment. But you can. It's getting to a point. I think it's so easy to discern. When people refuse to receive the truth, when people refuse to accept empirical evidence, I mean, I think it was Thomas Paine who said, it is I'm going to paraphrase him, but it's unreasonable to argue with someone who's given up all sense of reason.
Yeah.
And it's like yesterday. Even after the fact, where all of the intelligence agencies around the world, not only the IDF, I get people aren't going to believe the IDF, but on their side of the aisle. But when we came out, our intelligence agencies, European intelligence agencies, Israel literally revealed the evidence they had, which they collected that evidence through secretive modes of their intelligence services. In ways that they don't like to advertise. They don't want the enemy to know how sophisticated and well their surveillance system and intelligence gathering system is. But because this was so severe, they released audio tapes yesterday. I'm sure you probably heard them. Audio tapes of the Hamas leaders saying, "Oh, oops." I'm going to paraphrase, but basically they're saying, "Oops, was that us? Was that our missile? Yeah, I think that was one of ours." I mean, yeah, I'm kind of making it facetious in a silly way, but that's what they were saying. And Israel released this. I'm saying all that to say this. Just hours after that, yesterday, Rashida Tlaib has this blood-curdling diatribe, apoplectic speech in front of the Capitol building, I believe it was. I don't think it was. It might have been up in her district up in Michigan. I don't know where it was, but she's ranting and raving about how the Israelis killed over 500 innocent children by deliberately targeting a hospital. And she's got to know that's an absolute lie. She has to know that's an absolute lie. And yet she's
but they don't care.
This.
They don't care because it moves forward their narrative. And you talked about the Ayatollahs playing the long game. You know who really plays the long game? The devil.
Yeah.
And he sets things up generations in advance, and specifically these last few decades and the last couple of years, you talk about people not accepting the truth. It's pretty much, you'll hear this everywhere. People say, well, no one knows what the real truth is. You'll never know what the real truth is. People have come to accept the fact that men can be women and women can be men. I mean, once you get to that place in a culture,
supernatural deception.
I mean, talk about being given over to the lie, but that it's all a setup of the same thing, so that people will swallow Satan's lies. And this where we're at right now, people are they're unwilling to even look at the truth. Even
some Christians, sorry to say.
I know it saddens me. I'm just so saddened by it. But so I wanted to ask you a question, because I've been surprised by this. I've been pleasantly surprised by this. But I know that Joe Biden doesn't make the decisions that are being made, but him or whoever is making the decisions, I've been kind of shocked and pleasantly surprised by how immediate and continually strong they have said we're going to stand behind Israel, and the fact that he went there, was it yesterday? He went there yesterday. To me, it was like this. I don't understand what's going on here. Why this is happening from our leadership, our executive branch at this point. I'm glad that it is, notwithstanding this stupid decision to give.
I can tell
to make a commitment to however many hundreds of millions of dollars they committed, and hopefully that can be blocked at some level some point. But
I can tell you missed the first 15 minutes of my broadcast.
I did.
You did.
Tell me what
I
you
could tell
think about
that. Because I went through all of that. Did you? If you have not listened to, because I basically reported, just reported a tidbit of what Caroline Glick put out yesterday.
I haven't seen that yet.
On her podcast. It will answer. It will answer everyone.
Go watch that.
It will answer.
Okay.
Go and watch it, David. You've got to watch Caroline Glick's. And I'm saying this to everybody in my listening audience. I got it posted on my personal Facebook page. I got it posted on my Open Up the Doors page. I've got it posted on my Truth Social page. Go and listen to Caroline Glick's podcast from yesterday morning. It might have been Tuesday night she put it out, but I didn't see it till yesterday morning. David, it's worse than you think. It was worse than I thought. What she lays out in that report is mind-boggling. The entire thing that Biden is doing is a charade. What they're saying.
Well, it seems so, incongruous with what we know to be the real motivations behind whoever's making the decisions.
Because they're politically savvy enough to give what they think the popular and conventional wisdom is. They know America, for the most part, supports Israel. They know they've got certain things they've got to publicly state because of our alliance with Israel. Go and listen to all I can say is go and listen to Caroline Glick's podcast, because she really, last night when I was listening to some of my normal nighttime news broadcasts, I listen to mostly Newsmax these days, but I even flipped over for an hour to see what Sean Hannity was saying, and all of them were saying the same thing you just said. Oh, this, the Biden administration, they're standing by Israel, they're saying the right things, everything they're saying, it's a public charade. What's going on behind closed doors, according to Caroline Glick's reporting, who is very, very credible. She's very credible. She's got her, she's been Israeli journalist for decades. She's got her sources. She knows what's going on inside the government. And everything she said yesterday is 180 degrees opposite of what they're presenting publicly. And it's scary. Like I said, I covered it in my first 10 or 15 minutes of the broadcast.
Okay. Well, I'll go back and listen to that, and I'll listen to that Caroline Glick podcast, because I have been, puzzled by that. Like, okay, can I figure this out? And I'll tell you where I'm at with it, Andy. I know there's millions of Christians that are praying and continue to pray.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think about the 1973 war, where everybody and their dog were advising Nixon to not help Israel, and even Kissinger.
Mm-hmm.
And he woke up after having a dream, saying, I dreamed about this, and I heard the voice of my deceased mother telling me, you've got to stand by Israel, and that was just people's prayers, because Nixon was not an overly religious, holy guy.
Not at all.
but he had enough truth put into him by his mother,
mm-hmm.
that you have to stand by Israel, that the Lord brought that back to him, and he made that decision, and I truly believe that has forestalled judgment on America, because that's one of the only reasons why judgment has been forestalled on America, is because we have stood by Israel. And I shudder to think the day when we don't, because then the judgment won't be forestalled anymore.
Exactly.
But at this point, I'm saying, well, thank you, Lord. Prayers are being answered, at least at this point. And the other thing that because God will bring good out of it. He will cause all things to work together for good, and by good I mean His will and His ultimate purpose. That doesn't necessarily mean, it will bring peace. But by Him having made these statements, it does make it harder for them then, if something does happen all of a sudden, to say, oh, well, we're not going to do anything, because we've already said we're going to have their backs over and over. So at some level, there's a positive at this point, even if they're being disingenuous at this point. I'm going to say thank you, Lord, and just encourage people to keep praying that
God's will be done.
Will. There you go. His will be done. I posted a verse, I think yesterday, that I heard. I can't remember the name of the place that I heard it, but it's a great verse from Psalms, and it's where the Lord actually says, I will I will cut off the strength of the wicked, and I will increase the power of the godly.
I saw that.
And I think that has to be our prayer: cut off the strength of the wicked and increase the power of the godly, because that goes for the situation in Israel. It goes for the situation in Washington. It goes for every political, every military, because God knows the difference. He knows who is wicked, and He knows who's godly, even if sometimes we don't. If we don't see, the real motivations behind this guy's heart or that guy's heart, God does, and He knows who is godly, and He knows who is wicked. He knows who is following the leading of the Holy Spirit. He knows who is walking in the spirit of this age. And so when we pray, Lord, cut off the strength of the wicked and increase the power of the godly, we're praying His will, because He's revealed His will in that verse. And so I just want to encourage everybody to continue to pray that prayer. And
Amen.
God bless you,
Amen.
and for continuing to open our eyes and speak the truth. And
David, thank you for calling in. Before I let you go, where can people find your blog? Once again, give a shout out for it.
Acts, like the book of Acts in the Bible, ACTS 26, Acts 26 Witness.org. And the reason I call it Acts 26 Witness is because that's where Paul is giving his testimony before King Agrippa, and Jesus tells him, I have called you to be a witness of what I have shown you and what you will see. And that's what you are, Andy. You are a witness of what God shows you and what He will show you. And so Acts26Witness.org is my blog.
All right, David, God bless you. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you, Andy.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, and I am out of time, but keep it right here on Faith FM. There's more great Christian broadcasting and programming to come up. In the meantime, be bold, be strong, be brave, stand fast in the faith. Let all that you do be done in love, folks. And I'll be back next week, Lord willing,